I'm 61 years old. I've been married for almost 40 years. To most people, I'm the kind of woman you pass in the grocery aisle and forget by the next one. Quiet, polite, always with a list and a plan. I was the dependable type. The type who packed lunches, paid bills on time, and never missed a birthday. Love, for me, was loyalty, stability, a quiet hand to hold at night. I never looked for anything more. I thought I didn't need to. But what happened that day changed how I see everything. It shook something loose inside me I didn't even know was stuck, and I've never been the same since. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It started on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I remember because I had just come in from the garden, frustrated that the tomatoes I'd worked so hard to nurture were now soggy and drooping. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and damp earth, comforting in a way I hadn't noticed before. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and was just about to make a cup of tea when the doorbell rang. We don't get many visitors, not without a heads up. So my first thought was that it must have been a delivery. But when I opened the door, it was him. Aaron, my husband's coworker. We'd met a handful of times at company functions, dinners, a summer barbecue, the kind of events where I'd hover by the veggie tray and make small talk with wives while the men drank beer and talked shop. He always seemed younger than the rest. Not in age. He was maybe late 40s, early 50s, but in the way he carried himself. Present, observant, like he actually saw you when you spoke. Today, though, he looked different. His shirt was half soaked from the rain, and he clutched a manila envelope under one arm like it was precious. His eyes, usually calm and open, were anxious. "Hi," he said, voice a little breathless. "I'm sorry to just drop by. Is Frank home?" I blinked. No, he's at the office. Is everything okay? Aaron hesitated. That tiny pause, it hung there like a breath you didn't want to exhale. Then he offered a tight smile and shook his head. "It's nothing urgent. I can leave this with you if that's all right." He held out the envelope. I reached for it, but something made me ask, "Do you want to come in? You're soaked." He hesitated again, then nodded. "Thanks. That'd be great." I stepped aside. The house felt oddly silent with him walking in. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way his presence filled the space, like he didn't just enter a room, he settled into it. I led him to the kitchen and offered him a towel, which he took with a quiet thanks, dabbing at his hair, his collar. I made tea. It felt like the polite thing to do. We sat at the kitchen table, the rain tapping against the window panes. It was quiet for a while. Then he said it. "You know, Frank talks about you a lot at work." I glanced up, startled. "He does." Aaron nodded. "He says you're the reason he stays grounded, that you're the one person who never lets him drift too far from himself." I felt something flicker in my chest. Not quite pride, not quite sadness, something in between. "That's kind of him," I said. Aaron looked at me for a moment. Not in that casual, passing way people do. Really looked. "Can I ask you something, June?" I froze a little. Nobody outside of my closest friends ever calls me by my first name so directly. "Of course." "What do you think makes a marriage last?" The question shouldn't have caught me off guard, but it did. "I suppose trust," I said slowly. "Respect. Habit, maybe. Love, if you're lucky." Aaron tilted his head, considering that. "Do you think it's possible for two people to outgrow each other? My breath caught. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was I had been asking myself that same question, quietly, privately, for the past few years. Not because Frank and I didn't love each other, but because sometimes it felt like we were two trains running side by side. Close, familiar, but never really meeting anymore. I think, I said carefully, people change, and sometimes they don't always do it together. Aaron nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands. Frank and I had a talk today, a tough one. My stomach tightened. Is everything all right? He looked up. His eyes were darker now, sadder, but still calm. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I needed to see you. Why? Because he said something today about you, and I couldn't let it sit in my chest without at least saying something to you directly. What did he say? Aaron hesitated, then leaned forward, voice lower now, more intimate. He said you've been lonely, that he doesn't know how to fix it, that he's scared you've stopped needing him. The words hit me like a soft punch, not violent, just enough to knock the wind out of me. I looked away, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to say. Aaron didn't push. He just let the silence settle between us, his hands still on the table, not reaching for mine, but near, warm, present. The rain had started to slow. But inside me, something else had just begun. I don't remember exactly how long we sat there in that quiet space, but when Aaron finally stood to leave, I felt an ache I couldn't quite name. I walked him to the door, my fingers brushing the side of the envelope he had brought as I handed it back. He gave a small smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes, and said, "Tell Frank I dropped this off." I nodded. "I will." And then he was gone, swallowed by the damp gray of the afternoon. I stood at the door for a moment after it closed, the silence of the house suddenly louder than it had been before. My tea had gone cold on the table. I didn't reheat it. I just sat back down, staring out the window, my thoughts louder than the rain. Frank came home late that night. He was tired. I could see it in the way he moved, slower than usual, like the weight of the day still hung on his shoulders. He kissed my cheek absently as he walked in and loosened his tie. "There's something from Aaron on the counter," I said. He glanced at it. "Ah, right. He mentioned he might stop by." He did. Frank looked at me, then nodded, as if there was something more he wanted to say, but didn't. I watched him quietly. His shirt collar was still creased from the long day. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone and scrolled through emails, even though he was home and no one would blame him for just stopping for a moment. "Frank," I said gently, "can I ask you something?" He looked up. "Do you think I've changed?" The question hung in the air between us. He blinked slowly, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, over the years. Do you think I'm different than the woman you married?" He put down the phone. "Of course you've changed. We both have. It's been nearly 40 years. But have we changed together?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, then sighed. "Sometimes I don't know how to reach you anymore, June. You're still here, but you feel far." I swallowed hard. I could say the same. We didn't talk much more that night. We went through the motions, brushing our teeth side by side, changing into pajamas, lying in bed shoulder to shoulder but miles apart. I kept thinking about what Aaron had said. Not just the words, but the look in his eyes. The way he had seen me. Really seen me. The next few days passed quietly. Frank buried himself in work. I kept myself busy, folding laundry, watering plants, running errands. But in every quiet moment, Aaron lingered in my thoughts. I didn't expect to see him again so soon. It was Sunday afternoon, and I was at the farmer's market just outside of town. I go there every week. There's a woman who sells handmade soap that I like, and the man at the honey stand always gives me a discount because I bought from him once when he was just starting out. I was picking through bunches of late summer dahlias when I heard someone say my name. June. I turned. It was Aaron. He wasn't in office clothes this time. Just jeans and a navy pullover, sleeves pushed up, sunglasses perched on his head. He looked relaxed, different. "Oh, hey," I said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you here." He smiled. "I live a few blocks away. I come here sometimes for the bread." We stood there for a moment, not quite knowing what to say. Then I held up the flowers in my hand. These caught my eye. "They suit you," he said. That stopped me. I don't know why. Maybe because it had been so long since someone said something like that, without it being about practicality or routine. "Thanks," I said quietly. We walked a bit together after that, browsed the stalls, talked about silly things, how overpriced the organic peaches were, how the kettle corn stand always drew the biggest crowd. It was easy, comfortable. And then, standing by the edge of the market near a bench under a tree, he turned to me and said, "June, I wasn't honest the other day." I felt my heart stir. "What do you mean?" "I didn't just stop by to drop off paperwork. I needed to talk to you, alone, because something's been weighing on me." There was a pause, a shift in the air. "I've been working with Frank for 8 years," he said, "and I respect him. But I see things he doesn't, or maybe things he chooses not to." I didn't move, didn't breathe. "You deserve more than being seen as dependable," he said, voice soft now. "You deserve to feel alive." His words hit something deep inside me, something tender I hadn't touched in years. I should have walked away, but instead I asked, "Why are you saying this to me?" Aaron looked at me with a quiet intensity. "Because I care about you more than I should, and I think maybe you feel it too." I didn't respond. I couldn't, because part of me wanted to run, and part of me didn't want to leave that moment behind. The drive home from the market felt longer than usual. I remember gripping the steering wheel harder than I needed to, my knuckles pale against the leather. The dahlias lay on the passenger seat beside me, their colors too vivid, too alive for the heaviness inside my chest. I didn't turn on the radio. I needed silence. I needed to hear my thoughts. Only they weren't thoughts, exactly. They were feelings, sensations. A thrum in my chest, an ache in my ribs, the echo of Aaron's words ringing louder than anything else. You deserve to feel alive. That evening, I didn't tell Frank I'd run into Aaron. I cooked dinner. Lemon chicken with roasted potatoes, the kind he liked. We ate quietly, the way we always did. We asked each other about our days, not to discover something new, but to maintain the rhythm. Afterward, he went to the den to watch the news. I cleaned the kitchen slowly, methodically, as though if I scrubbed hard enough, I could rinse the heat from my skin. But I couldn't. Later that night, I sat alone on the back porch. A soft breeze lifted the edges of my nightgown, and the sound of crickets filled the quiet. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from cold, but from a weight I didn't know how to carry. Had I really been lonely this long? Had I really buried parts of myself so deep that someone else could find them before I even realized they were missing? And why did it feel so good and so terrifying to be seen? The next morning, I found myself checking my phone more than usual, hoping for a message, trading it, too. Nothing came. But the next day, it did. A short message. Just, would you meet me for coffee? Just to talk. I'll respect whatever you decide. No pressure. No games. Just that. I stared at it for what felt like an hour. Then I replied, tomorrow, 10 a.m., the cafe near the library. I told myself it was closure, that I needed clarity, that I couldn't let a single moment uproot my entire life without facing it directly. But deep down, I think I already knew this wasn't about clarity. It was about connection. We met the next morning. The cafe was quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a consignment shop. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and handwritten chalkboard menus. I arrived early, already seated with a cup of black coffee when Aaron walked in. He spotted me immediately and gave a small nod before joining me at the table. Thank you for coming, he said. I folded my hands around the warm mug. I didn't come for anything dramatic. I just needed to understand. I know. He looked tired, or maybe just thoughtful. There was something softer about him than before. I didn't plan this, he said. I didn't come into your home thinking I feel anything more than professional respect. But when I looked at you, June, I saw someone who had built her life around other people's needs, and I couldn't stop thinking about what was left for you. I looked down. You make it sound like I'm someone to be pitied. No, admired, but also recognized. I took a slow breath. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. Don't know what this is. It doesn't have to be anything. I just want you to know someone sees you. Someone listens. The words sat between us, heavy but not unwelcome. He reached out then, carefully, not assuming. His hand rested on the table, palm up. An invitation, not a demand. I looked at it, and I placed mine gently over his. Not out of recklessness, not out of longing, but out of a quiet, undeniable truth. I had forgotten what it felt like to be touched with reverence. We sat like that for a long time, no one rushing us, no expectations, just two people bound by something delicate and unexpected. When we stood to leave, he walked me to my car. The air was warm. A soft breeze stirred the leaves above us. I don't want to ruin your life, he said quietly. You're not, I said, but you might be reminding me to look at it. I didn't kiss him. He didn't ask me to. But something had shifted, gently, permanently. I drove home in silence again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt full. Like I'd opened a door inside myself I didn't even know was locked. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay beside Frank, listening to the soft rhythm of his breathing, the man I had built my life with, the man who had shared my triumphs, my losses, the years that crept by quicker than either of us expected. His hand brushed mine in the dark, out of habit more than tenderness. Still, I didn't pull away. How do you measure a lifetime of loyalty against one moment of awakening? The next morning I made pancakes. Not from a box, but from scratch, the way I used to when the kids were still home. Frank came in, surprised. Pancakes on a Monday? He asked with a sleepy smile. I shrugged, felt like doing something different. He poured coffee and kissed the top of my head. For a brief second, I closed my eyes and let the warmth of it settle. but it wasn't the same. Not because he changed, because I had. Later that afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. I didn't even know what I intended to write, maybe nothing. But once the pen touched the page, the words came. I wrote about how I had built a good life. I wrote about how I had always been proud of being dependable, of being someone others could count on. But I also wrote about how that pride had turned into a shell, a shield, and how one unexpected visit had cracked it wide open. I wasn't falling in love with Aaron. It wasn't that. It was that he reminded me I still had something alive inside me, something I hadn't nurtured in decades, my thoughts, my feelings, my own voice. He saw it, and now I couldn't unsee it either. That week, I invited Frank to take a walk with me after dinner. We strolled through the park near our house, where the trees had just begun to turn and drop their first golden leaves. He talked about work. I listened, then stopped. "Frank," I said, "can I ask you something honest?" He looked at me, cautious. "Of course." "Do you ever miss who we used to be?" He paused, his jaw tightening just slightly. "All the time." "Then why did we stop trying?" He looked away toward the lake. The surface shimmered like glass in the fading light. "I think we got comfortable," he said. "We stopped asking questions, stopped seeing each other. I didn't know how to fix it without hurting you." "You didn't hurt me," I said quietly. "You just stopped noticing me." He turned to face me then, really looked at me. "I'm noticing now." Something shifted between us, small, but real. A moment of honesty that neither of us had made room for in a long, long time. We didn't fix everything in that walk, but it was the first time in years we walked side by side and actually felt together. A few days later, I saw Aaron again, at the market. We locked eyes from across the flower stand. He gave a small smile. I returned it.